Hello, Ahorja. Welcome to Stories, Legends and Wonders of Aran. Aran is also known as Inishmore, the largest of the three Aran Islands. I'm Dara Malloy, Dara Ómé Lia Ascailge.
So we're heading up now to Temple Ciaran. That's the Church of St. Ciaran, who founded a monastery here probably as early as the 6th century. And he went on from here to found Clonmacnoise. So he's a very famous saint, and we're very proud to have had him here for a number of years before he headed off. So I brought you up the track to Temple Ciaran, and the first part of the monastic settlement area that we come across is this little road junction here, if you like. The little track ahead of us is called Jacob's Ladder, and that's clearly a name given to it by the monks who were familiar with scripture, because Jacob's Ladder appears in the Old Testament, where Jacob goes to sleep and he has a dream that there's a ladder going up and down to heaven, and there's angels climbing up and down it. And when he wakes up, he puts a boulder on the spot to mark the spot of his dream. So here we have this ladder, Jacob's Ladder, going up to heaven with all the angels climbing up and down it. And at the top is my house. So it is heaven for me. So I love this little lane. It's really beautiful for me. I'm now bringing you to the Holy Well of St. Ciaran, Tubbard Ciaran. A lot of people know that the well is here somewhere, and they often don't find it. So I'm going to walk you to it now. Follow me. So it's in this gate here. People look in the gate and they can't see it, so they think it's not there, but it is. It's up at the top of the hill, and it's in on the right, out of view. This might seem like a very insignificant hole in the ground to you, with a very small amount of water in the bottom. And yet, for all the time I think that people have lived on this island, which is about 5,000 years, they have honoured this well as a sacred well. This isn't the place where you go to get your drinking water or your water for washing yourself. This is a well you go to pray. And the reason for that in ancient times, long before Christianity, was because a well was an entrance into the womb of Mother Earth. And Mother Earth was a living being, the goddess Eriú, and there were other names for her as well. So we're standing on a living divine being, and to get to the place where all life comes from, in that Mother Earth, you go to the well. So the well represents this life-giving source, this feminine source, and that's why it was so sacred to people. And you can see how important it was going back hundreds and thousands of years, because they have landscaped it with all of these stones. And these stones had to be quarried out of that cliff there and moved into place by people who had only got their hands. They had no machinery like we have today, and some of these stones are tons, 4 or 5 tons in weight probably. So it goes back a long, long time. This tree here is a hawthorn tree, and you can see it's covered in ribbons. The tree is here to mark a sacred place. In Ireland, different species of trees were used for different purposes. Some were used for healing. The oak tree was the tree that represented the tribe and under which people got married. The hawthorn tree was to mark something sacred. So very often it was a child that had died at childbirth, and when you buried it, you planted the branch of a hawthorn tree above the child's body to protect it and to mark the sacred space. But this is also a sacred space where the Holy Well is. So there's a holy hawthorn tree marking that too. And when people come here to pray traditionally, and even still to this day, they often bring a ribbon with them and tie it on the tree. It can be a piece of rag, can be any piece of cloth at all, and they tie it on the tree. So I invite you, wherever you are, to have an intention now, and I'm going to tie a ribbon on the tree on your behalf. So normally when I bring groups here to talk about these places, I bring these ribbons with them, and everybody gets a chance to tie a ribbon on the tree. So I'm going to tie a yellow ribbon. Doesn't that sound right? Tie a yellow ribbon And I'm doing it on behalf of everybody watching. So at the end of this wall here is a basin, and in the basin are all these small pebbles from the shore, and they have a purpose. The purpose is to count the rounds. People here, when they come and pray, they walk the rounds of the wells. They walk around the well. There's a track the whole way around that wall there that comes back to here, and you're supposed to walk 7 times. So you're supposed to have 7 stones in your hand when you begin, and that counts your rounds. And you drop a stone back each time. Now that's a practice that's still practiced today. And when people come here to pray today, they're mostly Christians, at least the islanders are. And so they're honouring the memory of St. Ciaran, and they're seeking a blessing from his well. And they're praying as they walk around the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the Apostles' Creed, prayers that they know off by heart. But the origin of walking around the well was belonging to the myth that was believed in long before Christianity. And that myth was the earth is a goddess, but she needs a mate in order to be fertile and to produce a harvest. And that mate is the sun god, Lúgh, normally called Lúgh. He had other names as well. One of his names was Lúgh. And he travels like the sun across the sky every day because he can't take his eye off his beloved Mother Earth. And when the sun sets in the evening, that's him going to bed with Mother Earth, with his partner, and together they are fruitful, and that's what allows the earth to be fertile and allows us to have crops and the birth of animals and so on like that. So the origin of walking around the well was an imitation of the sun going around the earth. That means in the northern hemisphere you walk in a clockwise direction. They called it a sunwise direction, or Oscailga, a Thuris Deishil, a journey to the right, a journey to the south. It's the same word for both. So I'm going to start the rounds now. When I've done all of my rounds, I have 1 stone left. I drop it in, and then I go to the well itself. And now I seek a blessing.
These stories and all the other stories that are that are to be found on the Aran Islands can be found in my book Pocket Guide to Aran, Legends in the Landscape, and that's available from our website www.aislingpublications.com, with Aisling spelled AISLING, so aislingpublications.com.
There's one other book there on your screen, The Globalization of God, Celtic Christianity's Nemesis, which was my first book that I wrote apart from the pocket guide. I wrote the pocket guide a long time before it. But this was, if you like, my first, I don't know, more intellectual, more academic type book. It's a study of history, really, and an interpretation of history to show how Christianity really emerged from Judaism, and how Christianity took on the idea of becoming a global church. Well, to do that, it had to sort of be based in Rome as its sort of centre, with the Pope becoming, if you like, the CEO of the organisation, and equating himself to the Emperor of Rome, and the whole thing then became a very authoritarian structure. And as that version of Christianity spread throughout the world, especially on the back of colonization, which was the main way of spreading it, so it was spread by violence and by a lot of destruction and a lot of removal of indigenous spiritualities. That was the downside of it, that all the indigenous ways of, if you like, discovering the divine in their lives and expressing that in their mythology and in their sacred practices were all wiped out, which was such a shame. It was a destruction of diversity. And I suppose the book focuses on one of those indigenous ways of practicing Christianity, which was the Celtic Christian tradition, a tradition steeped in its own Celtic spiritual background, which had many gods and goddesses. So a very different form of Christianity. So part of this storytelling that I call the globalization of God is the story of the wiping out of Celtic Christianity. It happened first where it had spread throughout Europe and in Britain, and it happened then much later back in Ireland, which had never been part of the Roman Empire, so it took longer to subject that to Rome, but it did in the end with the Norman invasion of Ireland in the 12th century. So if you're interested in history, you might like that book too. We have some other books here too, published by our own publishing company, ashlingpublications.com. And the first one up there is Young at Heart, Tools for Psychological Hygiene, written by Tess Harper Malloy. That's my wife. And she has been a Jungian student all her life and has studied the application of Jungian ideas to personality types. We've had plenty of personalities coming through our house all our lives, so she's had plenty of material to work on. And she introduces you to all the basic ideas of Carl Jung around your personality, introvert, extrovert, your shadow, your animus, your anima, all those key ideas which came from Carl Jung. She explains them all and introduced you to sort of practical examples of how they're applied. So a very useful book if you're into the psychology of Carl Jung. The other book there is Reimagining the Divine and a Celtic Spirituality of Experience. That's my latest book. And it's a sort of introducing you to the whole Celtic tradition, where spirituality is about going out into nature and experiencing the divine in nature. So it's very different from the more sort of popular religions that are around today, who all emphasize your creed and what you think and what you believe. This Celtic spiritual tradition emphasizes what you experience and invites you to get out there and experience the divine in all the wonder and magic and mystery of nature. So that's my latest book. And then there's one other book that I'd like to introduce you to, and that's my wife's latest book called Inishmore, Poems and Images of Aran, written by Tess Harper Malloy. And that's Tess's collection of photographs she's taken over the last 40 years on Inishmore, and linking them to poetry she's written about Inishmore over that same period. So it's a lovely book of poetry and photographs published on very high quality paper, so you get a really nice image and lovely feel to the book. It's the sort of book that you put on your coffee table, and the sort of book that you maybe don't read from beginning to end, although you could. It's more that you dip into. It's a very enjoyable book and I highly recommend it. So all of these books are available on our website, ashlingpublications.com, and you'll also find them on other platforms.